Hey, how's it going? Alex here from IdeaSpot. Today we have a WordPress Gutenberg editor tutorial. I'm going to be using a plugin called Kadence Blocks. It makes Gutenberg editor really powerful and really easy to use. This is how I edit pages when I want to use the Gutenberg editor in WordPress. So I'm going to demonstrate three methods, starting from the easiest to the more advanced. The first method for total beginners is where you start with a Kadence starter template and then just edit the content to match your own content. So this is the easiest way. The second method is to start with a blank page and then add some pre-designed row layouts to the page. So here I've added 3 different rows to the page to build a completely new page, and then you can customize that content to match your own. And the third way is building a row layout completely from scratch. So as a challenge, I wanted to take an Elementor design from Astra and try to recreate that design in Gutenberg. So starting with an Astra starter site, I really like this mountain starter site. So this is what it looks like. This is the Astra Elementor version that I was basing the design off of. So I tried to recreate this in Gutenberg. So this is what I came up with using just Gutenberg editor and Kadence Blocks. So as you can see, pretty much anything we can do in Elementor, we can recreate just using Gutenberg with this Kadence Blocks plugin. So very powerful method, definitely worth learning. So make sure you watch this one right to the end. The easiest way to learn Kadence is starting with a Kadence starter template. I've already set one up here, but to do that, all you do is start with a fresh install of WordPress, go ahead and add the Kadence theme, appearance themes, add new, go ahead and search for Kadence in here and install and activate that theme. I've already done that. You'll get a setup wizard where you can install a starter template and install something like this. Now, I've already done all that in a previous tutorial. I'll link that in the description if you're interested in setting this up exactly. But today's tutorial, I really want to concentrate on this Gutenberg Blocks by Kadence Blocks. So this lets us use Gutenberg with a lot more power than the standard Gutenberg editor gives us by default. Now, you don't actually need to use Kadence theme to use this plugin, but as I said before, the easiest way to learn it is probably just install Kadence, get a starter template, and start playing around with it and see how it works. So looking at our front page here, if we go to edit page, we can actually see how this starter template was designed. So let's see how this page was constructed. We can see there's sections as we go down here. I think this second section is probably a good example to start with. So we can click anywhere on this section and go to our block navigation up here. And this allows us to see how this row was all set up. So basically, when you're using Kadence Blocks, you start with a row layout. You choose the number of columns, and then inside the columns, you put your content. So you can see this first column, it just has this image inside of it. And the second column, it's got headings and a button there. So this is the basic structure of setting up Kadence Blocks. Let's get started with a few examples. So there's probably 3 steps to learning how to do this from easy to more advanced. So the easiest way is starting with this starter template. So I've written this down. You can try editing the starter template. So just going onto that starter template, try to change the text, try to change the images, and try to get to match the content that suits what you're working on. The second step, you can actually start adding some pre-designed row layouts. So Kadence actually includes some really nice row layouts that you can edit and change the content to match your project. And once you've worked on steps 1 and 2 for a while, you've built up your familiarity and confidence, then you can move on to step 3, trying to build a row layout from scratch, which is what I'm going to do later in the tutorial. So make sure you watch to the end. But I'm going to take a design that was built in Elementor, and then I'm going to try recreating the design using Gutenberg. So once you've got familiarity with the system, you can pretty much do most of the things you've done in Elementor in Gutenberg just by following this process. But as I was saying, step 1, just install the starter template, try clicking on things, go ahead, try replacing the image, go to our media library. We can go ahead and change this image to something else. Let's get this picture of the mountain there. Go ahead and pop that in, see what that looks like. There we go. Now we can go ahead and try changing some of this text. Again, we can just click on it and try to change the text. So very easy to do that. We can go ahead and update it. That saves our changes. If we wanted to move this row around or remove it completely, we could go to our block navigator there, select our row layout, and we could actually move it down in the page layout. So we can move it below this stuff, above that stuff, move it back up, and you can swap things around as you like. You can also remove the row layout entirely just by using those 3 dots there and removing the block. So that removes it entirely. We can Control Z and bring that block back if we want it. So you can add, move things around with our starter template. So it's a really good base to start learning how to use Kadence Blocks. The next thing we can do is use a new pre-designed block. So let's go to the bottom of the page here and add a new block. We're going to add one. And I usually recommend starting with a row layout and then building within the row layout. So this will give us an opportunity to choose the number of columns. And we can also look at the pre-built library. So as a beginner, I think go for this pre-built library to start with, and then try changing the content from one of these pre-built blocks. So let's go ahead and grab one of these, maybe this one here. There we go. So this is quite a nice little setup. We've got an image there, some text and a couple of buttons. Let's start by changing out this image. Let's go ahead and replace it. We can open our media library. We can choose one of our images from our media library and go ahead and replace that. So let's select that one. And there we go. We've got our new image. Now let's work on this background. So this yellow background doesn't really suit that bluey green theme that we've got going on with this page. So let's go ahead, click on this page, and let's select the row layout. And let's actually have a look at what the background is going on here. So let's go to background settings. We've got a background color of orange there. We've also got a background overlay here, which is set to 100 opacity. Let's try to drag that around and see. So they've got the orange behind it, and we've got these two yellows with that gradient over the top. First thing I might do is change these yellows to match our actual colors that we use on our website. So let's go with that blue, and maybe go with a nice light gray there. And then this actual line effect is due to the location of the gradient. So we can actually change the gradient to make it look smoother across the thing. So if we set that to 100, it'll spread that blue across the page. We can actually move that one down there as well to get that sort of an effect. So that looks pretty cool. I think we can go with that for now. Given that we're using dark text, we might actually even want to make it even a little bit lighter. So we could go back to our color, make that background white, and then we can actually play with that overlay opacity and get it a little bit lighter if we wanted it to be. So totally up to you how much color you'd like to show through that gradient. So just using these beginner skills, we can probably build a page completely from scratch just using the pre-built library. So if we go to add new, let's go add a new page, and let's go blocks test. Go ahead and let's publish this one. There we go. Let's view that page. So we've got a nice blank page there. Let's go back. We can edit this page. So let's add some blocks. Let's go ahead and let's add a row layout. We can use the pre-built library. This one looks nice as a header. Let's add something else as our next block. What do we got? These little staff. Let's go and add one more pre-built library. Let's go with something colorful. Maybe this one here. Now we can see this one wasn't full width by default. We can go ahead and click this option here and make it full width. So that looks a lot better, and we can go ahead and start editing these blocks as we did before. If we wanted to go ahead and change this background, we could go ahead and look at the background settings there. So if we didn't want the image, we could just delete that image. And then we could, instead of having the image, we could just have a background color. Maybe choose one of the colors from our library. The thing that might be a little bit more creative is if we did a gradient background. So if we grab some colors there, we'll change that mode from overlay to just normal. We've got a normal overlay, and then we can have a nice gradient with our two main colors like that. If we change the location, we might be able to get that looking a little bit more interesting, and make the opacity, let's make it full opacity with the location near the middle. And then the angle is just 90 degrees. We might make it a bit more fancy if we put it on a more creative looking angle. And then let's just spread that location a little bit further to the bottom left. See, this is pretty nice now. We can update. The other thing they've got going on here is a nice divider at the bottom of that row layout. So if we look at our row layout and then we look at the dividers there, we can see we've got this divider. We can choose, there's lots of different shapes we can go with here. Let's maybe change to that one. So that's a bit of a smoother effect. And we can obviously add more content in the section if we wanted to as well. So if we went into here and we could go ahead and insert one before, that adds a block in between these two, and we can go and browse the blocks. So this is where we can see all the Kadence blocks. And we could even get really fancy and actually put in another row layout inside the row layout. And so add more columns, and you can add columns within columns and add lots of different intricacies to your section. But all these guys are very much like Elementor elements where you can just add them into your section and they give you lots of pre-designed sort of content. So if we wanted to say add these little info boxes, which are pretty cute, we can go ahead, change these. They have different styles of info boxes that we can add in there. We can change our icons and things. So if we wanted to change this little wheel to something else, we could go there, go ahead, remove that one and find something else from the icon library that we could go with. So there's lots of default icons here. Go ahead and maybe put that little circle in, for example, or whatever else do they have. They've got speech bubbles and microphones, little music notes. So change it to anything you want. We might want to change our background color here, for example. So we could just go into the container settings and we've got our background color is set to white and our border set to that beige color. So let's make our border match our theme, shall we? Make that dark border and let's make the background white. But let's actually allow a little bit of that gradient to come through. So let's change the transparency there. And you can see we can allow a little bit of color to come through just for a little bit of effect. So, and it actually has a hover effect as well. So as we hover, we see we've got white with a white border. So we can actually go to the hover effect there on that tab. And again, we can change that hover background. Let's say when we hover it, we might get even more transparency. So it's even darker. And the hover border, again, let's make it the same color. So it gives a little bit of a shading as you hover it. So lots of things you can do with that. You can do the same thing with the icon as well. So if we were to go to the icon, you can go to the media settings there and you've got your icon border and you've got your icon color, icon background. So if we wanted a white icon, for example, with a dark background, we could totally have that. So, and again, hover effects, so many things you can do on here. I don't think I'll have time to go through every block and every setting. What I really want to do is move on and let's try building a section completely from scratch using these Kadence blocks. All right, so just as an experiment, let's try recreating some Elementor content using Gutenberg and Kadence blocks. So what I might do is try recreating one of my favorite Astra starter templates. So I really like this mountain template. I've used this quite a few times in the past. I like this simple blue overlay with the blue buttons, and this is a fairly good looking front page. So you've got this background image with the blue overlay, and we've got 3 headings here, different sizes and a couple of buttons. So not particularly complicated. Let's see how we go trying to build this kind of thing using Gutenberg. All right, on our demo site, let's start by adding a new page. And I just want to call this page Mountain. Let's go ahead and publish that. There we go, let's view the page. So we've just got a nice blank page here. Let's go back to that editor. Okay, let's make a new block to do this. We want to be using a row layout. Now I want this row layout to be full width. So let's choose full width there. And I want 1 column. And we're in the column settings here. Let's go back to our row layout settings there. So let's go row layout. And I want the block to have a background image. So there's our background image. We want to select our mountain. So I've already uploaded that mountain image, but you can use whichever image you want, obviously. So let's check that one. Go ahead and select there. So we've got our nice background image. Now we need that to be taller. We want it to fit up the whole screen. So let's do that now. So in our row layout block setting, let's scroll down and find the structure settings. And from here, we want the minimum height. We can change the minimum height here. We can use pixels. We can use viewport height, which is what we want to do here. So we want to make that 100% of the screen. So let's just make that 100. There we go. Let's update that one. Let's see how this is actually looking. There we go. So we've got our base to work on here. We've got a background that takes up 100% of our screen. So this is a good start. All right. So we'll notice the color is not the same as our original. So this actually has a nice sort of blue radial overlay on top of it. So we want to add that blue overlay. So I actually already had a copy of this demo site installed. So I can actually open this in Elementor and see what they're using for their overlay colors. So let's have a look. We've got these 2 shades of blue. I've got this color here and this light teal. So I'm going to note those down, those color codes, and we can use these a bit later to put into our Gutenberg page. The other thing worth noting is the font that they're using here. This is all the Montserrat font. If you want to find the font on a web page, you can use this Chrome extension called What Font, and you can just click on the font and it'll tell you Montserrat, as we were talking about before. So this is all Montserrat, and you can actually see the size, the line height, and the color, the weight. So very useful if you want to recreate certain styles working in Chrome browser. So what I'll do here is actually, let's set up the typography in Kadence to match what we're trying to recreate here. So we'll set the base font to Montserrat. There we go. And let's also just, the heading font family is already Montserrat and H3 is Roboto. So let's just make that, let's just remove that so it inherit the font from the Montserrat default there. And while we're in our customizer, why don't we change the color gradients here so they match what we're recreating. So let's go back to our colors and let's change the main color and the accent color to actually match what we're doing here. So let's go with this one. And let's grab our notepad colors that we copied previously. So we want to get that, that darker one, pop that in there. There we go. And the lighter one, let's get that one as well. There we go. Pop that in. Good. So now our colors are consistent with what we're doing. That's one thing I love about Kadence is it's really easy to make on-the-fly adjustments to the whole website's colors and fonts just by going in through the theme customizer, and this is applied throughout the website. All right, now go back to our background overlay settings and the gradient. It looks like our colors are here now, so we can go with that one. And the other one was this color. So that is the same background overlay. Now this is a linear, I think we're using a radial one on the actual site we're trying to copy, but there we go. That looks pretty close. I think the opacity might be a little bit different. So let's actually have a look here, back to our Elementor version, and they're using 50% opacity. So we can change the opacity slider here to match, make it 50 as well. So there we go. Our blank page is looking pretty much like the original here. Okay, let's get started putting our headings in. So let's add a new block. We want to use advanced heading there. Let's paste in that text multi-purpose template. So I obviously want that to be in the center and I want that heading color to be white. There we go. Let's have a look at the font there. We want to make sure we're using Montserrat. There we go. And we want that to be regular, I think. The size, 28. So looking at that, it's got a bit more letter spacing. So let's make that spacing a little bit wider. 2.5. Looks pretty close to what we were using before. And I obviously want this to be in the middle of our screen. So let's go back to our row layout. And right now it's set to the vertically aligned top. Let's go for the vertically aligned middle. So that is a bit better. So that looks okay. Let's hit update and let's get back into it. So we'll go back to our column and I want another block. We're going to do advanced heading again. And I want to get that next bit of text, create your website there. We go. Might exit the font finder there and let's paste that in. And I want that to be in H1 this time and center that, make it white. I think our font size here is a bit bigger. So we want that to be Montserrat. We're going with 65 and I changed the spacing to 15. Let's leave that. We want the size to be 65. There we go. And the weight I think was a little bit more, 500. And I think the actual height was 65 as well. Get that space. There we go. So that's our original here, and what we've got here is pretty similar. Let's go to our next bit. So we've got a bit of filler text there. Let's copy that. And we're going to do the same thing. Advanced heading. I'm going to use advanced heading just because it has so many styling options. So we'll paste that text in, and I just want that to be paragraph and centered and make it white. Now this actual text color is white and the size I think is, let's get that size. We are using 16 for this, so let's bring it down to 16. There we go. Now we can see that is a bit too wide. Looking at this one, it actually breaks around that H1 heading. So let's actually change the width of our column. The best way to do that is actually looking at our row layout structure and looking at the structure settings and changing the actual max width here to match up. So we want to change that width so we can see it's wide there and we can bring it in to be as narrow as we like. So I think 710 looks like it's about right. So that loctus neck thing there actually breaks on the end of the line. So that looks about right. So let's update. And we've got a couple of those buttons below this. So let's go ahead and add a new block in there. We want to do row layout. I might add 2 columns and put a button in each column. So let's go ahead and add a, let's go with advanced button. There we go. So a bit hard to see that button. Looking at these buttons, one is transparent with blue hover. The other is white with the blue hover. So let's go ahead and sort those out. So got this button and I want that button to be, it is transparent, but I want that text color to be white. So text color needs to be white. There we go. And I actually want that button to be called services. And the actual text needs a bit of spacing there and the text needs to be smaller. So I think we've got a large button and our actual text, where's that? Over here, we can change our text to be, that's big. We want it to be 12, I think. There we go. The actual spacing needs some spacing there. So let's look at the font family. We've got letter spacing, so we can space that out. I think maybe 2 looks about right, does it? I think that's pretty good. Looking at these original buttons, we've got a lot more padding on the left and right of the button, and we've got a white border around it as well with square edges. So let's fix that up. We've got our border. There we go, border width and radius. So let's give us a couple border width with a border color that's white. There we go. And then we want our actual button to have a bit more padding. So we've actually got small, medium, and large, and we can further customize it with that gear. So left and right padding, we can space that out. Got some nice spacing in there, and we want a bit of spacing on the top and bottom there too as well. So I think that looks pretty similar. There we go. Let's hit update. So looking at this actual button compared to the original, it does look like these corners are a bit sharper and that has a hover color of that blue. So let's see if we can fix that up. So the actual border radius, let's make sure that's set to 0. So that looks better. And the hover color, we can get to that under the hover tab there. And let's change that background color to match. So there we go. I think that's pretty similar. It's just that hover color border is gray there. So let's make the hover color border match as well. So there we go. We get that nice effect as we go over it. There we go. Let's hit update. All right. So that's one button done. Let's do the next button. So we want to do an advanced button. I might try to save some time here by clicking this one and actually copying the styles. So we can copy the styles there and go ahead. Same thing with that little icon there. We can paste the styles in. So there we go. We've got the same styles. We can type in, I think this one was called About Us. So that looks pretty cool. Let's go ahead and update. Again, it does look like we need to fix that border radius. So let's go ahead and get that border radius set to 0. There we go. That's better. And this button is actually white, and when you hover it, you get a blue effect. So let's change that. So the actual background color, rather than being transparent, is now white. And the text in this case is blue. So let's change that text color to that blue. There we go. Pretty nice. I think that's the same now. Cool. Text changes to white when you hover it, which it does. Good. Okay, back on our original, it looks like there's not too much space between these two buttons, but on this, our columns have quite a bit of space between them. So what we can do is go to the actual row layout that we use for those two columns. So let's get that one. And we can change the structure of that row layout. So we can go to the structure settings and let's look at the width here. If we drop that width down, we can actually change the width. So just be careful that we don't break onto 2 lines there. But if we go for 390, I think that's a nice sort of distance between them. The other thing we can tweak here is something called the column gutter. So the actual layout has 2 columns and it has a standard 30 pixel gutter. So we could change that to say a narrow gutter of 20. And then I think we're pretty close to our original. So you can tweak that however you like. So let's actually view our page and see how we're tracking. So let's go to the document, go ahead and view that in a new tab. So this is what we've got compared to our original here. So it looks pretty similar. I think what we've got here and here is pretty similar. We've got a little bit more spacing in there. So let's go ahead and put a little bit of spacing in between here and there. So let's go ahead and add a block in there. Let's just put some spacing in, I think. There we go. Look at that block. And we don't want the divider. We just want some space. So let's just make that, say, 40 pixels, update that. And then we can actually have a look. See how we're tracking. So looking at the page we've constructed here versus the original, we're pretty similar. We could tweak the spacing and stuff a little bit more if we really wanted to. I think the one thing we could change is the way the background overlay sits here, because on this case, I think they've set that background a bit lower on the screen. So I might actually change that. You can see the tip of the mountain there is above and it's meant to be below that E. So we could tweak that a little bit if we wanted to. Go over to our row layout and we can go to our background settings here. So we can see on our background settings, we've got our horizontal and vertical position, which you can move it around by moving that little circle here. So we can see at the bottom or the top, and we'll move it up to the top and we've got more space under that thing there. So let's make that 10% and leave that one as 50 on the horizontal. Let's hit update and then we can reload this. And then we can see we've got something pretty similar to the original. I think this is enough. You get the idea. You can build anything that you can basically do in Elementor or in Gutenberg using this Kadence Blocks method. Now, before we wrap this up, I will mention that there is also a pro version. Everything I did today was using the free version, which is really all you need to get started. But the pro version actually has some really cool features, particularly these carousels and advanced sliders. I think a lot of people really love carousels and sliders, especially on WooCommerce pages. Definitely great to use product carousels. They convert really well in terms of making sales. The other things that work really well for content marketing and e-commerce are these modal windows, great for gathering leads. So if you're into e-commerce or content marketing, I think this pro version could be really useful to have. I'll pop a link to the pro version in the description there. I'll try to make sure you get the best possible deal through using that description link. So definitely check that out if that's something that you need for your website. I've also done previous Kadence tutorials on the channel. I'll put a couple of the more important ones right here. So the basic Kadence setup tutorial and the Kadence WooCommerce tutorial, check those out as well. But thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.